In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Good morning. So we all know we have like another week for the fast of St. Mary. And another thing that we know for sure is that her intercession is very strong. We ask for the intercession of St. Mary in a lot of things in our lives. And here we have another week left in the fasting. And I wanted to bring up a topic and discuss something that a lot of us sitting here are impacted by. And I wanted to talk about this. I'll give you a lot of, information from studies and things like that. But it's something that is impacting us as humans in our age now. And it's important that we are to be cognizant of it. We don't just do things because everyone else is doing it. We need to be very careful in what we do. Couple of things before we start. One thing that I'm going to share a verse from you from Genesis. It's not good for a man to be alone. It's not good for man to be alone. Another verse in Hosea, it says in Hosea 4:6, it says, "My people perish from lack of knowledge." So in light of these two verses, I'm going to share with you some things. Basically, it's all about this right here. This thing that we use a lot in our day today. To give you some statistics when it comes to cell phones and electronics, and the reason, by the way, we're talking about this today is that we are to be careful of it. And one of the things is that now that we have 1 week left in the St. Mary, maybe we are to be cognizant of its use, and hopefully in light of all these statistics and information that we'll share, you're cognizant that when I reach for my phone, I need to think twice. Why am I reaching it, and am I being rude to someone, or am I ignoring someone with me? It's not good for man to be alone. What happens is that these causes us a lot of times to isolate ourselves, to be alone. So it's not good for man to be alone, and at the same time, it's important that we are to have information. An average American swipe their phone 150 times a day. Keep that in mind. To the extent we use it so far that no longer we feel it. You can go out and look at a restaurant. You see couple that are going out to eat together and they're both on their phones. You see a family, all the family are sitting together, but even though they're together, they're really alone with their own phones. And it's important to be thinking about that. And while God told us it's not good for us to be alone, to the extent that I actually even experienced that when in the old days when you used to carry the phone on your belt. It's something called phantom vibration sensation. So in other words, the phone is not on you and you think it's vibrating and you go and you reach for it. And the reality is it's not there. And what happens is it's the habit of a loop habit that in the brain it gives you, because you get that chirp or you get that vibration. All of a sudden that brain gets something to see, and then that brain keeps wanting to do that more and more, even though the phone is not on you. The brain wants that, and it kind of causes you to think that. Phantom vibration sensation. We need to be careful of these things. So we'll talk a little bit about brains, and this is all about studies, some studies and things are changing in the world of studying the brain and so on, and how we're finding the brain, how plastic the brain is. So one thing that was discovered recently in the last 25 years is that the human brain is very plastic. It changes. It's formed and it could be reshaped and by our behavior. Our behaviors, the things that we do, reshapes our brain. And then the study shows basically that the brain is very malleable and it reshapes. In other words, this can reshape our brain on how we use it, how our behavior towards our phone. So there's something called neural pathways in our brains. And these neural pathways are required for us when it comes to dealing with other people, relationship, and how we relate to others, and human functionality. It all goes back to something called neural pathways. And these neural pathways are very critical for us, and they're necessary for us to communicate to other people. For me to communicate with my wife, or these human, these neural pathways in our brain are very important, and it's actually could be developed and it could be pruned. In other words, if I use it, it's strengthened, and if I don't use it, it's pruned. It's no longer being used, so no longer it's there. So in other words, if I keep continuing reaching for my phone and isolating myself, that neural pathways in my brain for using that phone will be developed more, and then when I don't talk to people, when I don't relate to other people, these neural pathways that are in our brain that has to do with relating to other people is pruned. And the important thing is that we need to think about me as a human to be. God intended for me to be human, to be relational. Relational in the sense that I communicate with face-to-face communication, and not being a communication with a phone or a gadget or a game. I'm not telling you this that these are going to go away. They're not going to go away. But the fact is, we need to be cognizant of these things. There was this experiment that happened in a doctor's waiting room, and what happened was is that two make-believe patients were sitting in the waiting area, and then there is a bell that rings. Every time the bell rang, the two make-believe patients stood up and sat down. Give it a couple of minutes, the real patient saw that happening, and guess what did she do? She started standing up and sitting down. The two make-believe patients went away and went to see the doctor, and then this patient left, and then she kept doing that. Every time she hears the bell, she stands up, and then more patients came in, and then one patient comes in and looks at it. This is nonsense. Why do I keep listening, standing up and sitting down when the bell rings? And the thing is, give it some time. That man that was resistant of standing up and sitting down when we heard the bell, he started following through. He started standing up and sitting there. He was resistant. And the reason is that we could be doing the same thing with our phones. I'm sitting down and I see someone pull up their phone. Well, it's okay, then I should pull up my phone too and continue feeding the neural pathways that leads me to relate more to the phone more than the person. So it's important to understand that we are to develop. God created us to be relational. We are an emotional and social being that we are to relate to other people. One thing also in part of the studies that they found is that if your brain is engaged for 3 hours or more a day in something that is highly stimulating to your brain, your neural pathways are very going to be strong in that. So if you focus on this gadget or TV or anything for a long time, your focus is going to be, you're strengthening this, and ultimately when you start relating to other people, it becomes like, why? And then there's tension and stuff like that happens. So it's important to know how long and kind of gauge how much time you spend. Just to kind of give you a result of a study that happened by Kaiser Family Foundation. The study was basically on technology use among youth, how the technology is used. In 2004, they came up with the study, and they looked at the study. They looked at how many hours do youth look into the phones and use their gadgets. And at that time, by the way, there were also TVs, because the gadgets were not too high, but it was basically the games and the TV and the media and so on. So they came out in 2004 that an average youth spends 6.5 hours using media and stuff like that. That blew their brain. They kind of thought, wow, that's crazy, that's a lot of hours. Came 2008, they were reluctant to actually do the study again because they thought it hit the ceiling. How much more can youth be using these gadgets and watching TV and playing games? In 2008, came out to be 7.5 hours. And then in 2015, they came up again, and now it's much more, and now it's 9 hours average, an average teenager uses. This is based on that study from the Kaiser Foundation. And imagine if someone is using that much this gadget, how much stronger the neural pathways that leads them to using this and being isolated causes that person. And it's important that we are conscious of that, because we are paying a cost for that. There is a cost for that. And when I keep using this and isolating myself, my families are impacted. or one of the things that it's leading to, a lot of anxiety among youth. And the reason for the anxiety a lot of times is basically because they are not able to relate or cope with the reality because they focus so much on the virtual reality. And they focus a lot on the virtual. When it comes to reality, these neural pathways to lead with, to deal with these struggles or to deal with others, it's very hard for them and causes them anxiety. And there's a lot of studies that show other things as ADD. Also, it's acquired by the use of this a lot and so on. But one thing that I want you to think of is that don't be like these people in the waiting room. Because everyone stands up and sits down, we do that. Not because everyone keeps looking at their phone throughout the day and sitting with their family that I do that. We gotta be a little bit different. We can't be like that. And if you're struggling with that, that's a good time today because we're fasting, the St. Mary fast. Ask for intercession. Ask through the prayers and intercession of St. Mary, give me the will to think twice before reaching for my phone and focusing. I'm sure I shared with you a lot of statistics about youth and so on. By the way, there's something called digital natives, is those who are native. They grew up, technology was there. If you're older than 35, you're called digital immigrant. You're a digital immigrant. You knew how life was without gadgets. And now you know how life is with the gadgets. That's a digital immigrant. And those who grew up didn't know any better. There was no anything better, but it's always the gadgets, it's always the games, the Xbox. These are called digital natives. I gave you a lot of statistics about the digital natives, but I have to tell you the reality is a lot of us, the digital immigrants, are doing things very similar to that. We reach to our phone very often, and for no reason sometimes. For no reason. We just want to check on what's going on. And it's important that we as adults are setting the rule when it comes to these things, on how do we deal with these things at home? How do we deal with the TV, or how do we deal with using media? I use the media, and I think it's okay. We need to set that goal. Get into the habit. So this is the takeaway. One of the takeaway that you want to do during this next of the fast, and it may be that a life-trending experience, is that 15 minutes a day, spend meaningful discussion with your children. The sad part is that one of the studies, by the way, it's actually was by it's New Media. It's called New Media. Common Sense Media. It's a new report for Common Sense Media. And one of the things that they found in the Common Sense Media, I'll give you very fast statistics. Teens feel addicted to phones, causing tension at home. The feeling of that addiction is causing tension at home. 1 out of 2 teens feel addicted to their device. 59% of the parents feel that their kids are addicted. That's all in that one study. 77% of parents feel that their kids are distracted when they're together because of their being, that high affinity to using the phone. And the one thing that shocked me is that an average parent spends 3.5 minutes a week in meaningful discussion with their children. That is shocking to me. And this is a call for us as parents. We need to do something about that. And we may not be in that ballpark, the 3.5 minute. But I encourage that you have a day where there's a time every day, tech-free. You're sitting with the family, and the dinner time is fine, and have meaningful discussion. How are the days? What are you struggling with? What are you facing? How are you dealing with your friends? Having that table time is very important. And here it's telling you 3.5 minutes a week. And why? Is because every family member, even though we're together, we're actually alone with our gadget and not focusing on each other, and we're feeding the neural pathways that leading us to the isolation, which God did not intend for us, versus us actually leading to having that neural pathways to be able to relate to each other. be very careful with these things. CNN documentary was called Being 13, studied 200 8th grader. And they took their social media and the 150,000 posts during a small period of time, and one thing they came up with is that teens are on the media constantly. Social media is a source of anxiety for many teens. And what was the source of anxiety is that when teens put something, they really are anxious how many likes they get. They really crave the attention. And why they crave the attention is because it could be that they're not getting the attention from the parents, because the parents are also on the thing. So their source of anxiety that the CNN documentary showed is that how many likes, how many friends are doing something without them. They're focusing on what are people doing without them and not being involved. Another source of anxiety that they found is that the bullying, because things are being said about them in social media and that causes them anxiety. And not only that, but the interesting part is when it comes to social media, that the CNN documentary showed that a lot of youth are not on the internet, are not on the social media to post things, but they're actually lurking and studying their friend's site to find what their stand is. It's like, how do I fit with my friends? Who's doing what and how do I fit with these things? And the results of this documentary is saying that this is highly addictive. Your gadgets, the things that isolates are very highly addictive to the extent that it's like taking crack from a crack addict. That's really scary. I'm not telling you that it's going to go away. I'm not saying that. I'm not telling you it's bad to use, because there is important to use it for things. But it's important that you are cognizant that when you reach for it, it's important that you remember, I am feeding my neural pathways and I'm strengthening them. That isolates me. If I have an option to speak to someone face to face, that is my first option. If I am at home, I am to be with my family, not isolated with my screens, because I need to strengthen my neural pathways that causes me to relate to other people, because one day I'll be married. And I want to be able to relate with people and cope with problems and not just focus on the isolation and focus on the virtual reality and just ignore the real reality. So I encourage you to be cognizant of these things. And I pray that through the intercession of St. Mary, that every family here is not part of this 3.5 minutes. We should be spending at least 15 or more than 15 minutes talking to people, talking to my relatives, talking to my friends, talk to your grandparents. How many times you call them, you go visit them, but focus on relating with people more than virtual relationship, because a lot of times this is going to lead us to isolation. So, takeaway, when you're together, think about it. If somebody reaches for their phone, it doesn't mean that, he reached for the phone, that means it's okay for me to reach the phone. No. Be that person that resists. No, I'm not going to. No, let's talk. Let's talk. And family, parents need to lead, set that example, not fall into that. Every family should have at least 15 minutes together a day with meaningful conversation with your children. Spend time with them. Don't go into your rooms. If you're home and your family is home, get into the common area in the living room and sit and talk and chat and talk about things and make these neural pathways that relate to people stronger, because if you don't use them, you're pruning them. Okay? So I pray to God that the rest of this fast, that we ask the prayer and intercession of St. Mary to help us as families to strengthen the neural pathways that helps us to relate to others in order for us to cope with life and cope with reality, and all the glory be to our God forever. Amen.